Nurse turns away stray dog and her dying puppy. Then she realizes. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a sterile glow on the pristine white walls of the emergency room. Eleanor, her stethoscope draped around her neck, moved with a practiced efficiency between patients, her footsteps muffled by the linoleum floor. The air was thick with the scent of antiseptic and the underlying hum of human suffering. It was the graveyard shift at Mercy Hospital, the time when the city seemed to exhale its deepest anxieties and sorrows. Eleanor, a seasoned nurse with a calm demeanor and a compassionate heart, was accustomed to the ebb and flow of human vulnerability that washed through the ER doors each night. Tonight, however, a heaviness clung to her, a weariness that went beyond the physical demands of her job. It was a familiar weight, a shadow that had followed her for years, a constant reminder of a loss that had shattered her world. She paused by the window, gazing out at the cityscape, a tapestry of twinkling lights against the inky blackness. The city that never slept seemed to mock her own inability to find rest, her mind haunted by memories that refused to fade. A sigh escaped her lips, a silent plea for respite from the relentless ache in her heart. She longed for the days when her smile came easily, when her laughter filled the room, when her heart was whole. But those days were gone, stolen by a cruel twist of fate that had left her with a gaping wound that refused to heal. She had learned to live with the pain, to bury it deep beneath layers of professionalism and stoicism. Yet, tonight the facade felt brittle, threatening to crumble under the weight of her unspoken grief. She longed for a distraction, a connection, something to ease the loneliness that gnawed at her soul. A sudden commotion at the entrance doors broke through her reverie. A security guard's voice, sharp and urgent, echoed through the waiting area. Eleanor turned, her curiosity piqued. A small crowd had gathered near the entrance, their faces a mixture of concern and curiosity. Eleanor pushed through the crowd, her nurse's instinct kicking in. And there, in the center of the commotion, was a sight that made her heart skip a beat. A stray dog, a scruffy mutt with matted fur and pleading eyes, stood trembling by the automatic doors. Clutched gently in her mouth was a tiny puppy, its whimpers barely audible above the din of the ER. The dog looked up at Eleanor, her eyes filled with a desperate plea for help. It was a look that mirrored Eleanor's own unspoken pain, a look that resonated with the deep well of compassion within her. In that moment, something shifted within Eleanor. A spark of hope ignited in the darkness, a flicker of connection that promised to illuminate the path forward. She knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that this was no ordinary encounter. This was a chance to heal, a chance to give, a chance to love again. Eleanor knelt beside the dog, her touch gentle as she assessed the situation. The mother dog, wary but desperate, allowed Eleanor to examine the puppy. It was tiny, its fur matted and damp, its breathing shallow and labored. Eleanor could feel the puppy's fragile bones beneath her fingers, its tiny heart fluttering erratically. "Oh, you poor thing," she murmured, her voice filled with concern. She looked up at the mother dog, her eyes meeting the animal's with a shared understanding of the urgency of the situation. The dog whined softly, nudging the puppy closer to Eleanor as if entrusting her with its precious cargo. Eleanor felt a lump forming in her throat, her heart aching for the mother's desperate plea. She knew she couldn't ignore this call for help. She gently lifted the puppy, cradling it in her arms, and turned towards the ER doors. The mother dog followed closely, her tail tucked between her legs, her eyes never leaving her pup. Eleanor navigated the bustling ER, her presence with a dog in her arms causing a stir among the patients and staff. She ignored the curious glances and the occasional disapproving frown, her focus solely on the fragile life in her hands. She found an empty examination room and gently placed the puppy on the table. The mother dog whined and circled the table, her anxiety palpable. Eleanor reassured her with a soft touch and a calming voice. "It's okay, girl," she whispered. "We're going to help him." She quickly assessed the puppy, her trained eyes noting the signs of severe dehydration and malnutrition. She suspected an underlying infection, perhaps even a congenital condition. She knew she needed to act fast. She called for a veterinarian, explaining the situation with a sense of urgency. Dr. Ramirez, the on-call vet, arrived shortly, his brow furrowed with concern. He examined the puppy, his expression growing grave. "He's in rough shape, Eleanor," he said, his voice somber. "We need to run some tests, get him stabilized." Eleanor nodded, her heart sinking. She knew the odds were stacked against the tiny creature, but she refused to give up hope. She watched as Dr. Ramirez worked, his movements swift and precise, his focus unwavering. The mother dog remained by the table, her eyes fixed on her pup, her body trembling with a mixture of fear and hope. Eleanor knelt beside her, offering a comforting presence, a shared vigil in the face of uncertainty. As the hours passed, the ER slowly quieted down. The initial flurry of activity subsided, leaving a hushed stillness that amplified the ticking of the clock and the rhythmic beeping of the machines monitoring the puppy's vital signs. Eleanor and the mother dog remained steadfast in their vigil, their shared anxiety forging an unexpected bond. Eleanor, lost in her thoughts, found herself confiding in the dog, whispering her fears, her regrets, her longing for a connection that had been cruelly severed. The dog listened, her head tilted, her eyes filled with an uncanny understanding. Eleanor felt a sense of comfort in her presence, a solace she hadn't experienced in years. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky with hues of pink and orange, Dr. Ramirez emerged from the examination room, his expression weary but hopeful. "He's stable, Eleanor," he said, his voice laced with cautious optimism. "We've managed to hydrate him and fight off the infection. He's still weak, but he's a fighter." Eleanor's heart soared. She rushed to the table, her eyes filled with tears of relief as she saw the puppy's chest rising and falling with a steady rhythm. The mother dog whined softly, licking her pup's face with a tenderness that brought a lump to Eleanor's throat. "You did it, Mama," Eleanor whispered, stroking the dog's fur. "You saved your baby." In that moment, as the sun streamed through the window, casting a warm glow on the scene, Eleanor felt a sense of hope rekindled within her. She had witnessed a mother's unwavering love, a testament to the resilience of life, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there was always a glimmer of light. News of the mother dog and her sick puppy spread through the hospital like wildfire. Nurses, doctors, and even the janitorial staff stopped by the examination room to peek at the unlikely pair. Whispers of admiration and concern filled the hallways, a ripple of compassion spreading through the sterile environment. Eleanor, initially hesitant to share the story, found herself recounting the events of the night to curious colleagues. She described the mother dog's desperate plea, the puppy's fragile state, and the unwavering bond between them. Her colleagues listened with rapt attention, their faces softening with empathy. Some shared their own stories of encounters with animals, their voices filled with a warmth that belied the clinical setting. Eleanor felt a connection with them, a shared understanding that transcended the professional boundaries. She realized that beneath the starched uniforms and the clinical detachment, there beat hearts filled with compassion and a yearning for connection. Dr. Ramirez, impressed by Eleanor's dedication and the mother dog's unwavering devotion, made a special exception to allow the dog to stay with her puppy. He set up a makeshift bed in the corner of the examination room, providing food and water for the exhausted mother. Eleanor, touched by his kindness, found herself drawn to the gentle veterinarian. They shared quiet conversations about their shared love of animals, their passion for healing, and their observations of the remarkable bond between the mother dog and her pup. As the days passed, the puppy, now named Chance by Eleanor, slowly regained his strength. He began to eat on his own, his whimpers replaced with soft mews, his eyes sparkling with a newfound vitality. The mother dog, whom Eleanor had named Hope, remained vigilant, her gaze never leaving her pup's side. She would lick his fur, nudge him gently with her nose, and curl protectively around him as he slept. Eleanor, witnessing this unwavering devotion, felt a warmth spread through her, a thawing of the icy grip of grief that had held her captive for so long. She found herself smiling more often, her laughter echoing through the once sterile examination room. She would spend her breaks sitting with Hope and Chance, reading to them, talking to them, sharing her hopes and fears, her dreams and regrets. She felt a sense of connection with them, a bond that transcended language, a shared understanding that filled the void in her heart. One afternoon, as Eleanor was reading to Hope and Chance, a young girl, no more than 10 years old, peeked into the examination room. Her eyes widened with wonder as she saw the dogs, her face breaking into a wide smile. "Can I pet them?" she asked, her voice filled with excitement. Eleanor, hesitant at first, saw the genuine love for animals in the girl's eyes. She nodded, introducing the girl to Hope and Chance. The girl, her name was Lily, was a patient in the hospital, recovering from a minor surgery. She had been feeling lonely and scared, but the presence of the dogs brought a spark of joy into her eyes. She spent the next hour playing with Chance, her laughter filling the room, her fear momentarily forgotten. Hope watched with a gentle gaze, her tail wagging softly. Eleanor, observing this heartwarming scene, felt a sense of purpose rekindled within her. She realized that Hope and Chance were not just stray dogs. They were healers, bringing comfort and joy to those who needed it most. As Lily left the room, her face beaming with happiness, Eleanor knew that Hope and Chance had a special gift, a gift that extended beyond the walls of the hospital, a gift that had the power to touch countless lives. The days turned into weeks, and Chance continued to thrive under Eleanor's care. He was no longer the frail, whimpering puppy who had arrived at the hospital clinging to life. He was now a playful, energetic ball of fur, his tail wagging incessantly, his barks filled with the joy of living. Hope, too, seemed to blossom. Her fur, once matted and dull, now gleamed with health. Her eyes, once filled with anxiety, now sparkled with a newfound confidence. She had found a safe haven in the hospital, a place where she was loved and cared for, a place where she could nurture her pup without fear. Eleanor, witnessing their transformation, felt a sense of renewal within herself. The darkness that had enveloped her for so long seemed to lift, replaced by a glimmer of hope, a ray of light piercing through the clouds of grief. She found herself looking forward to her shifts at the hospital, eager to spend time with Hope and Chance. They had become her family, her source of comfort, her reason to smile. She would arrive early, bringing them special treats, toys, and soft blankets. She would spend her breaks playing with Chance, teaching him tricks, and taking him for short walks in the hospital courtyard. Hope would follow them, her tail wagging, her eyes filled with pride. She had become Eleanor's shadow, her protector, her confidant. Eleanor, in turn, had become Hope's guardian, her provider, her friend. She would brush her fur, talk to her about her day, and share her hopes and dreams. Their bond deepened, their connection growing stronger with each passing day. They had found solace in each other, a shared understanding that transcended the boundaries of language and species. One evening, as Eleanor was preparing to leave after her shift, Dr. Ramirez approached her, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Eleanor," he began, "I've been thinking about Hope and Chance." Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. She had been dreading this conversation, knowing that the hospital couldn't keep the dogs indefinitely. "They can't stay here forever," Dr. Ramirez continued, his voice gentle. "It's against hospital regulations." Eleanor nodded, her throat tightening. She had known this day would come, but the thought of losing Hope and Chance filled her with a sense of dread. "I've contacted the local animal shelter," Dr. Ramirez said. "They're willing to take them in." Eleanor's eyes widened in alarm. She had heard stories about overcrowded shelters, about animals being euthanized due to lack of space. She couldn't bear the thought of Hope and Chance facing such a fate. "But," she began, her voice trembling, "what if they get separated?" Dr. Ramirez sighed. "I know you're worried, Eleanor," he said, but the shelter assures me they'll do everything they can to keep them together. Eleanor wasn't convinced. She had seen the bond between Hope and Chance, the unwavering devotion they shared. She couldn't risk them being torn apart. There might be another option, Dr. Ramirez said, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. You could foster them. Eleanor's heart leaped. She had never considered fostering before, but the thought of providing a temporary home for Hope and Chance filled her with a sense of excitement. I'll do it, she said, her voice firm with determination. I'll foster them. Dr. Ramirez smiled. I knew you would, he said. You have a big heart, Eleanor. Eleanor smiled back, her heart overflowing with gratitude. She couldn't wait to bring Hope and Chance home, to give them the love and care they deserved, to share her life with these two extraordinary creatures who had brought so much light into her world. Eleanor's small apartment had never felt so alive. The once quiet space was now filled with the sounds of playful barks, the patter of paws on the hardwood floor, and the occasional happy yelp. Hope and Chance had settled in with surprising ease, transforming the sterile environment into a cozy haven. Hope, ever vigilant, had claimed a spot by the window, her keen eyes observing the bustling street below. Chance, a whirlwind of energy, explored every nook and cranny, his tail wagging furiously as he discovered new treasures, a forgotten tennis ball under the couch, a stray sock peeking out from under the bed, the crinkling sound of a discarded plastic bag. Eleanor, watching their antics, felt a warmth spread through her, a sense of contentment she hadn't experienced in years. The apartment, once a stark reminder of her solitude, now echoed with the joyful sounds of companionship. She had rearranged the furniture to accommodate her new housemates, creating a cozy corner for Hope with a soft blanket and a basket of toys, and setting up a puppy pen for Chance with a comfy bed and a water bowl. The first few days were a whirlwind of activity. Eleanor, juggling her work schedule with the demands of caring for two dogs, found herself constantly on the move. Walks in the park, trips to the pet store, puppy training sessions, and endless games of fetch filled her days. She discovered a newfound patience she hadn't known she possessed, gently guiding Chance through potty training mishaps, redirecting his playful nips, and teaching him basic commands. Hope, ever the watchful mother, observed Eleanor's interactions with Chance, her tail wagging approvingly. She seemed to sense Eleanor's genuine affection for her pup, her trust deepening with each passing day. Eleanor, in turn, marveled at Hope's intelligence and gentle nature. She had initially been intimidated by the dog's size and protective instincts, but she soon discovered a loyal and affectionate companion beneath the tough exterior. One evening, as Eleanor sat on the floor playing tug-of-war with Chance, Hope nudged her hand with her nose, her eyes filled with an unspoken invitation. Eleanor, understanding the gesture, leaned down and wrapped her arms around Hope's neck, burying her face in her soft fur. Hope responded by resting her head on Eleanor's shoulder, a sigh of contentment escaping her lips. In that moment, a silent understanding passed between them, a bond forged in shared vulnerability and a mutual need for connection. Eleanor, her heart overflowing with emotion, realized that she had found more than just companions in Hope and Chance. She had found a family, a source of unconditional love, a reason to believe in the possibility of happiness again. As the weeks passed, Eleanor settled into a comfortable routine with her new housemates. The apartment, once filled with the echoes of silence and grief, now resonated with the joyful sounds of life. She would wake up to the sound of Chance's excited barks, eager to start the day. Morning walks in the park became a cherished ritual, a time for Eleanor to clear her head, breathe in the fresh air, and connect with the natural world. Hope, always by her side, would trot alongside Eleanor, her senses alert, her presence a comforting reassurance in the bustling city. Evenings were spent curled up on the couch, a book in Eleanor's lap, Chance snoozing at her feet, and Hope resting her head on Eleanor's knee. The gentle rhythm of their breathing, the warmth of their presence, filled Eleanor with a sense of peace she hadn't known she craved. Her work at the hospital took on a new meaning. She found herself approaching her patients with a renewed sense of empathy, her heart more open, her touch more gentle. She shared stories of hope and chance, bringing smiles to weary faces and offering a glimmer of hope in the midst of suffering. Her colleagues noticed the change in her, the lightness in her step, the sparkle in her eyes. They commented on her newfound radiance, her infectious laughter, her renewed zest for life. Eleanor, aware of their observations, couldn't deny the transformative power of hope and chance's presence in her life. They had filled a void she hadn't realized existed, mending the fragments of her broken heart, and reminding her of the beauty and resilience of the human spirit. The arrival of spring brought a renewed sense of hope and vitality to the city. Trees that had stood bare against the winter sky now burst forth with vibrant green leaves. Flowers bloomed in vibrant hues, and the air was filled with the cheerful chirping of birds. Eleanor, her heart lighter than it had been in years, embraced the change of season with a newfound enthusiasm. She spent her days off exploring the city with hope and chance, discovering hidden parks, strolling along the riverfront, and enjoying the simple pleasures of picnics in the sun. Hope, reveling in the freedom of open spaces, would chase squirrels with playful abandon, her tail wagging furiously. Chance, still a puppy at heart, would tumble through the grass, his clumsy attempts at catching butterflies bringing a smile to Eleanor's face. One sunny afternoon, as Eleanor sat on a park bench watching Hope and Chance frolic, a familiar voice startled her. "Eleanor? Is that you?" She turned to see a woman approaching, her face etched with a mixture of surprise and concern. It was Susan, her older sister, whom she hadn't seen in years. Eleanor's heart sank. The unexpected encounter brought a flood of memories, a painful reminder of the tragedy that had fractured their family. Susan, sensing her hesitation, sat beside her, her gaze filled with a gentle understanding. "I saw you from across the park," she explained. "I couldn't believe it was you. You look happy." Eleanor managed a weak smile. "I am," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am happy." Susan reached out and took her hand, her touch warm and reassuring. "I'm glad, Eleanor," she said. "I've been worried about you." Eleanor averted her gaze, unable to meet her sister's eyes. The weight of their shared past, the unspoken pain, hung heavy between them. "I know it's been a long time," Susan continued, her voice soft, "but I want you to know that I've missed you. I've missed our talks, our laughter, our sisterhood." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. She had longed for this connection, for the reconciliation that had seemed impossible for so long. "I've missed you too, Susan," she admitted, her voice trembling. They sat in silence for a moment, the unspoken words hanging in the air. Then Susan spoke again, her voice filled with a tentative hope. "Can we start over, Eleanor?" she asked. "Can we try to rebuild what we've lost?" Eleanor looked at her sister, her heart filled with a mixture of apprehension and longing. She thought of the years of estrangement, the pain they had both endured, the forgiveness that had seemed unattainable. But she also saw the genuine love in Susan's eyes, the yearning for connection, the shared grief that had bound them together even in their separation. She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, Susan," she whispered. "We can try." They embraced, their tears mingling, their shared pain easing with the touch of forgiveness. Hope and Chance, sensing the shift in emotion, came bounding towards them, their playful barks a welcome distraction from the weight of the past. Susan, her face lit up with a smile, knelt down and greeted the dogs, her laughter echoing through the park. Eleanor, watching them interact, felt a sense of hope blossom within her, a promise of healing, a new beginning. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, Eleanor and Susan walked side by side, their hands clasped together, their voices filled with the warmth of rediscovered sisterhood. Hope and Chance trotted alongside them, their presence a symbol of the unconditional love that had paved the way for reconciliation, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there was always a chance for forgiveness, for healing, for a new beginning. The reunion with Susan brought a wave of warmth and healing into Eleanor's life. They began spending time together regularly, sharing meals, reminiscing about childhood memories, and cautiously navigating the minefield of their shared past. Susan, a therapist by profession, offered a listening ear and gentle guidance as Eleanor grappled with the lingering grief and guilt that had haunted her for years. They talked about the accident that had claimed their parents' lives, the years of estrangement that followed, and the unspoken pain that had festered between them. Eleanor, with Susan's support, began to confront the demons that had haunted her, acknowledging her own role in the tragedy and slowly forgiving herself for the past. She realized that holding on to guilt and resentment had only served to isolate her, preventing her from moving forward and embracing the possibility of happiness. Hope and chance played a crucial role in Eleanor's healing process. Their unconditional love, their playful antics, and their constant presence provided a comforting distraction from the weight of her emotions. They would often accompany Eleanor and Susan on their outings, their joyful energy infusing their gatherings with a sense of lightness and laughter. Hope, with her intuitive nature, seemed to sense Eleanor's emotional state, offering a comforting nudge or a gentle lick at just the right moment. Chance, ever the playful puppy, would demand attention with his insistent barks and playful nips, pulling Eleanor out of her introspective moments and reminding her of the simple joys of the present. One rainy afternoon, as Eleanor and Susan sat by the window, watching the storm rage outside, a sense of melancholy settled over Eleanor. The gray skies and the relentless drumming of rain seemed to mirror the turmoil within her. Susan, sensing her sister's mood, reached out and took her hand. "What's on your mind, Eleanor?" she asked gently. Eleanor hesitated, unsure how to articulate the complex emotions swirling within her. I feel overwhelmed sometimes," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I feel like I'm still trying to outrun the past, like it's always there, lurking in the shadows." Susan nodded understandingly. "It's okay to feel that way, Eleanor," she said. "Grief is a journey, not a destination. It takes time to heal, to forgive, to move forward." Eleanor sighed, her gaze drifting towards Hope and Chance, who were curled up asleep on the rug. "I don't know what I would do without them," she confessed. "They've been my lifeline, my shelter from the storm." Susan smiled. "They're remarkable creatures, aren't they?" she said. "They have a way of sensing our needs, of offering comfort without judgment, of loving us unconditionally." Eleanor nodded, her heart filled with gratitude for the unexpected blessings that had entered her life. She looked at her sister, her eyes filled with a newfound clarity. "You know, Susan," she said, "I used to think that happiness was something I had lost forever, something that was out of reach. But now I realize that happiness is a choice, a conscious decision to embrace the present, to forgive the past, and to open our hearts to the possibility of love." Susan smiled, her eyes shining with pride. "That's a beautiful realization, Eleanor," she said, "and I believe it with all my heart." They sat in comfortable silence, the storm raging outside, a stark contrast to the warmth and serenity within the apartment. Eleanor, surrounded by the love of her sister and her canine companions, felt a sense of peace settle over her, a sense of hope that had been absent for far too long. She knew that the journey ahead would still have its challenges, its moments of doubt and sadness. But she also knew that she was no longer alone, that she had found a haven in the midst of the storm, a place of love, forgiveness, and healing. Life with Hope and Chance had brought a sense of balance and joy into Eleanor's world. The days fell into a comfortable rhythm of work, walks in the park, cozy evenings at home, and the occasional visit with Susan. The shadows of the past seemed to recede, replaced by a growing sense of hope and contentment. However, fate, it seemed, had other plans. One morning, as Eleanor was preparing for work, she noticed Hope behaving strangely. The usually energetic dog seemed lethargic, her movements sluggish, her appetite diminished. Eleanor, concerned, decided to keep a close eye on her throughout the day. By the evening, Hope's condition had worsened. She was shivering, her breathing labored, and she refused to eat. Eleanor, her heart pounding with anxiety, called Dr. Ramirez, who advised her to bring Hope to the animal hospital immediately. The diagnosis was swift and devastating. Hope had contracted a rare and aggressive form of cancer. The prognosis was grim. Eleanor, reeling from the news, felt a wave of despair wash over her. She couldn't bear the thought of losing Hope, her loyal companion, her protector, her source of strength. She spent the next few days by Hope's side at the animal hospital, refusing to leave her for a moment. She stroked her fur, whispered words of comfort, and prayed for a miracle. Dr. Ramirez, his face etched with concern, did everything he could to ease Hope's suffering. He administered medication to manage her pain and offered words of support to Eleanor, his own eyes filled with sadness. Susan joined Eleanor at the hospital, offering a comforting presence and a shoulder to cry on. They shared their grief, their memories of Hope, their gratitude for the time they had been given with her. Chance, sensing the somber atmosphere, remained unusually quiet, his playful energy replaced by a mournful whimper. He would curl up beside Hope's bed, his head resting on her paw, his eyes filled with a deep sadness. Eleanor, watching their silent exchange, felt her heart breaking. She couldn't bear the thought of Chance losing his mother, of facing this loss alone. She made a decision. She would bring Chance to the hospital every day, allowing him to spend time with Hope, to comfort her, to say goodbye. The daily visits became a ritual, a bittersweet routine filled with both love and sorrow. Chance would lie beside Hope, licking her fur, nuzzling her gently, his presence a source of comfort in her final days. Eleanor and Susan would sit nearby, sharing stories of Hope's playful antics, her protective instincts, her unwavering loyalty. They would laugh through their tears, remembering the joy she had brought into their lives. As Hope's condition deteriorated, Eleanor knew that the end was near. She held Hope close, whispering words of love and gratitude, her tears falling onto the dog's fur. Hope, her eyes filled with a deep affection, licked Eleanor's hand one last time, a final gesture of love and gratitude. Then, with a soft sigh, she closed her eyes and slipped away peacefully. Eleanor, her heart shattered, held Hope's lifeless body close, her sobs echoing through the quiet room. Chance whimpered softly, nudging his mother's body with his nose, his mournful cries a testament to the depth of their bond. Susan wrapped her arms around Eleanor, offering comfort and support. They cried together, their shared grief a testament to the profound impact Hope had had on their lives. As they left the hospital that evening, the city lights seemed dimmer, the world a little colder. Eleanor, her arms wrapped around Chance, felt a profound sense of loss, a void that threatened to consume her. But she also felt a deep gratitude for the time she had been given with Hope, for the lessons she had learned, for the love she had shared. She knew that Hope's spirit would live on, a beacon of light guiding her through the darkness, a reminder of the enduring power of love and compassion. The days following Hope's passing were shrouded in a heavy sadness. Eleanor moved through her life in a fog, the vibrant city seeming muted and distant. The silence in her apartment was deafening, a constant reminder of the absence that had shattered her newfound peace. Chance, too, grieved deeply. He wandered the apartment listlessly, his playful barks replaced by mournful whimpers. He would often sit by the window, his gaze fixed on the street below, as if searching for his mother's familiar form. Eleanor, her heart aching for his loss, did her best to comfort him. She showered him with affection, took him on long walks, and spent hours playing with him, hoping to distract him from his sorrow. But the pain of Hope's absence lingered, casting a shadow over their lives. Eleanor found herself struggling to cope, the old wounds of grief reopening, threatening to consume her once again. Susan, ever the supportive sister, became Eleanor's anchor during this difficult time. She visited often, bringing meals, offering a listening ear, and sharing her own memories of Hope. They talked about Hope's unwavering loyalty, her gentle nature, her playful spirit. They laughed through their tears, remembering the joy she had brought into their lives. Susan encouraged Eleanor to channel her grief into something positive, to honor Hope's memory by helping other animals in need. She suggested volunteering at the local animal shelter, offering Eleanor a way to connect with other animal lovers and make a difference in the lives of abandoned and neglected creatures. Eleanor, hesitant at first, eventually agreed. She knew that Susan was right, that immersing herself in the world of animal rescue would be a fitting tribute to Hope's legacy. Her first visit to the shelter was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. She was greeted by a cacophony of barks and meows, a symphony of longing and hope. She saw dogs of all shapes and sizes, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and anticipation. She spent the afternoon walking dogs, playing with cats, and cleaning cages. She talked to the staff, learning about the challenges of running a shelter, the stories of the animals who had found their forever homes, and the heartbreak of those who were still waiting. As she left the shelter that evening, Eleanor felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that she had found a way to honor Hope's memory, to channel her grief into something positive, to make a difference in the world. She returned to the shelter regularly, her dedication growing with each visit. She became a familiar face, her gentle touch and calming presence a source of comfort to the animals. She formed a special bond with a timid, one-eared terrier named Oliver, who had been abandoned at the shelter months earlier. Oliver, with his soulful eyes and gentle demeanor, reminded Eleanor of Hope, and she found herself drawn to his quiet resilience. She began spending extra time with Oliver, taking him on long walks, playing with him in the shelter's courtyard, and showering him with affection. She saw a spark of hope ignite in his eyes, a glimmer of trust that had been extinguished by his past experiences. One day, as Eleanor was leaving the shelter, she noticed a couple watching her interact with Oliver. They approached her, their faces filled with admiration. "We've been watching you with that dog," the woman said. "You have a special way with him." Eleanor smiled. "He's a special dog," she replied. The couple explained that they had been looking for a companion for their elderly dog, and Oliver had caught their eye. They had been hesitant to adopt him, given his timid nature, but seeing Eleanor's connection with him had reassured them. Eleanor, her heart swelling with joy, encouraged them to adopt Oliver. She assured them that he was a loving and loyal dog, deserving of a loving home. The couple, their faces beaming with happiness, thanked Eleanor and left the shelter with Oliver by their side. Eleanor watched them go, her heart filled with a sense of satisfaction. She knew that Hope would have been proud of her, that she had honored her memory by helping another animal find happiness. She realized that grief, though a painful journey, could also be a catalyst for compassion, a force for good in the world. Eleanor's work at the animal shelter became a lifeline, a source of solace and purpose in the wake of Hope's passing. She found a sense of fulfillment in caring for the abandoned and neglected animals, her gentle touch and calming presence a balm to their wounded spirits. She continued to spend time with Oliver, even after his adoption, visiting him at his new home and rejoicing in his transformation from a timid, withdrawn dog to a happy, confident companion. Her dedication to the shelter did not go unnoticed. The staff, impressed by her compassion and tireless efforts, offered her a part-time position as a dog walker and caregiver. Eleanor, eager to deepen her involvement, accepted without hesitation. Her days were now filled with a new routine. She would arrive at the shelter early in the morning, eager to greet the dogs, their excited barks a welcome chorus. She would spend hours walking them, playing with them, and tending to their needs. She learned their personalities, their quirks, their individual stories. She knew which dogs craved attention, which ones preferred solitude, and which ones needed extra reassurance. She became a champion for the underdog, the shy and overlooked animals who often languished in the shelter. She would spend extra time with them, coaxing them out of their shells, showering them with affection, and helping them regain their trust in humans. She also became an advocate for adoption, sharing the animal stories on social media, organizing adoption events, and encouraging potential adopters to open their hearts and homes to these deserving creatures. Her efforts paid off. She witnessed countless animals find their forever homes, their tails wagging with joy as they left the shelter with their new families. Each adoption brought a sense of satisfaction, a reminder that she was making a difference in the world. One day, as Eleanor was walking a group of dogs in the park, she noticed a man sitting on a bench, his shoulders slumped, his gaze fixed on the ground. She sensed a deep sadness emanating from him, a familiarity that resonated with her own experiences. She approached him cautiously, her dogs circling her legs with playful curiosity. The man looked up, his eyes filled with a mixture of surprise and apprehension. Eleanor introduced herself and her canine companions, offering a friendly smile. The man, his name was Thomas, responded with a hesitant nod. They struck up a conversation, the dogs acting as icebreakers, their playful antics drawing a smile from Thomas's lips. Eleanor learned that Thomas had recently lost his wife, his companion of many years. He was struggling with grief, the silence of his empty house a constant reminder of his loss. Eleanor, her heart filled with empathy, shared her own story of loss and healing, of the profound impact hope and chance had had on her life. She spoke of the unconditional love of animals, their ability to comfort and heal, their power to bring joy even in the darkest of times. Thomas listened intently, his eyes filled with a glimmer of hope. He shared his own love of animals, his fond memories of the dogs he had shared his life with. Eleanor, sensing a kindred spirit, invited Thomas to visit the shelter, to meet the animals, to experience the healing power of their presence. Thomas, hesitant at first, eventually agreed. He accompanied Eleanor to the shelter the following day, his apprehension replaced by a growing curiosity. He was immediately drawn to a gentle, aging Labrador named Buddy, whose calm demeanor and soulful eyes mirrored his own quiet sadness. He spent the afternoon walking Buddy, talking to him, and sharing his grief. As he left the shelter that evening, Thomas felt a lightness in his step, a glimmer of hope rekindled within him. He thanked Eleanor for her kindness, for introducing him to Buddy, for reminding him of the possibility of connection and joy. Eleanor, watching him go, felt a sense of satisfaction, a confirmation that she was on the right path. She had found a new purpose in helping others find solace and healing through the love of animals, a purpose that honored Hope's memory and filled her own life with meaning. Eleanor's life had taken an unexpected turn. The once solitary nurse, haunted by grief and loss, had blossomed into a beacon of compassion, her heart open to the healing power of connection and the unconditional love of animals. Her work at the shelter had not only brought solace to countless abandoned creatures, but had also rippled outwards, touching the lives of people in her community. Thomas, inspired by his encounter with Buddy, became a regular volunteer at the shelter, his quiet presence a source of comfort to both the animals and the staff. He and Eleanor formed a close friendship, their shared experiences of loss creating a bond of understanding and mutual support. They would often spend their evenings together, sharing stories, reminiscing about their loved ones, and finding solace in the company of their canine companions. Eleanor's story, spread through word of mouth and local news articles, inspired others to open their hearts and homes to animals in need. Adoption rates at the shelter soared, and the once overcrowded kennels were now filled with hopeful faces, eager for a second chance at happiness. Eleanor, recognized for her dedication and compassion, was invited to speak at local schools and community events. She shared her experiences with Hope and Chance, her voice filled with passion as she advocated for animal welfare and the importance of responsible pet ownership. She spoke of the healing power of the human-animal bond, the unconditional love that animals offer, and the transformative impact they can have on our lives. Her words resonated with her audiences, inspiring a new generation of animal advocates and creating a ripple effect of compassion throughout the community. One day, as Eleanor was leaving the shelter after a particularly rewarding day, she noticed a familiar figure standing by the entrance. It was Lily, the young girl who had befriended Hope and Chance during their stay at the hospital. Lily, now a teenager, had grown taller and more confident, but her eyes still sparkled with the same love for animals. She greeted Eleanor with a warm hug, her voice filled with excitement. "I wanted to thank you," Lily explained. "You and Hope and Chance, you made such a difference in my life." Eleanor smiled, her heart swelling with warmth. She remembered Lily's fear and loneliness during her hospital stay, the joy that Hope and Chance had brought into her young life. Lily explained that she had been volunteering at the shelter ever since, inspired by Eleanor's example. She had become a passionate advocate for animal rights, educating her classmates and organizing fundraising events for the shelter. Eleanor, touched by Lily's dedication, realized that the seeds of compassion she had sown had taken root, blossoming into a new generation of caring and responsible individuals. As Lily left the shelter, her face beaming with purpose, Eleanor felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She had not only found healing and happiness in her own life, but had also inspired others to embrace the transformative power of compassion and the enduring bond between humans and animals. She knew that Hope and Chance, wherever they were, would be proud of her, their spirits watching over her, their love guiding her on her path of kindness and service. Years passed, and Eleanor's life continued to evolve in ways she could never have imagined. The once quiet and reserved nurse had blossomed into a pillar of her community, her name synonymous with compassion, resilience, and unwavering dedication to animal welfare. She had become a respected voice in the animal rescue world, her expertise sought after by shelters and organizations across the state. She traveled extensively, sharing her knowledge, inspiring others, and advocating for the humane treatment of animals. Her apartment, once a sanctuary for Hope and Chance, had become a temporary haven for countless foster animals. Dogs and cats of all shapes and sizes passed through her doors, each one leaving a paw print on her heart, each one a testament to her unwavering commitment to giving them a second chance at happiness. Chance, now a mature and dignified dog, remained by her side, his loyalty unwavering, his presence a constant source of comfort and joy. He had become her co-pilot on her journeys, her confidant, her furry soulmate. One crisp autumn day, as Eleanor was preparing for a speaking engagement at a national animal welfare conference, she received an unexpected phone call. It was from the local animal shelter, her voice filled with urgency. "Eleanor," the shelter manager explained, "we have a situation here. A dog was brought in this morning, and, well, she reminds us of Hope." Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. Hope's memory, though cherished, still held a tinge of sadness, a reminder of the profound loss she had endured. Intrigued, she rushed to the shelter, her mind filled with questions. As she entered the kennel area, she was greeted by a sight that made her breath catch in her throat. A scruffy, brown-eyed dog, bearing an uncanny resemblance to Hope, sat huddled in the corner of a cage, her tail tucked between her legs, her eyes filled with fear and uncertainty. Eleanor felt a wave of emotion wash over her, a sense of recognition that transcended physical appearance. She approached the dog cautiously, her voice soft and reassuring. The dog, hesitant at first, slowly emerged from her corner, her tail giving a tentative wag. Eleanor knelt down, extending her hand, her touch gentle and inviting. The dog responded by licking her hand, her eyes meeting Eleanor's with a depth of emotion that sent shivers down her spine. In that moment, Eleanor knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that this was no ordinary encounter. She learned that the dog had been found wandering the streets, emaciated and disoriented. She had no collar, no microchip.
No identification.
She was a stray, lost and alone, just like Hope had been all those years ago. Eleanor, her heart filled with compassion, made a decision. She would foster the dog, give her a temporary home, a safe haven while the shelter searched for her owner. She named the dog Grace, a tribute to the unexpected blessings that had entered her life, a reminder of the enduring power of hope and second chances. Grace settled into Eleanor's home with surprising ease, her initial timidity giving way to a playful and affectionate nature. She and Chance formed an instant bond, their shared energy and love of life filling the apartment with joyful chaos. Eleanor, watching their interactions, felt a sense of completion, a full-circle moment that brought tears to her eyes. She realized that Hope's legacy lived on, not only in her own heart but also in the countless lives she had touched, in the ripple effects of compassion that had spread throughout her community. As the days turned into weeks, Eleanor grew increasingly attached to Grace. She couldn't bear the thought of parting with her, of sending her back into the unknown. She contacted the shelter, her voice filled with a hopeful plea. "I know it's a long shot," she said, "but I was wondering, is there any chance I could adopt Grace?" The shelter manager, her voice warm with understanding, replied, "Eleanor, we've been waiting for you to ask. Grace has been waiting for you, too." Eleanor's heart soared. She rushed to the shelter, her excitement palpable. She signed the adoption papers, her hand trembling with joy. As she left the shelter with Grace by her side, she felt a sense of completeness, a profound sense of belonging. She had found her family, her purpose, her place in the world. She looked at Grace, her eyes filled with love and gratitude. "Welcome home," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Grace responded with a joyful bark, her tail wagging furiously, her eyes sparkling with happiness. Together, they walked towards the setting sun, their silhouettes merging with the cityscape, their hearts filled with the promise of a bright future, a future filled with love, compassion, and the enduring bond between humans and animals.